today was the day when the drip, drip, drip of the Diddy trial evidence became all-out waterboarding. And wouldn't you know it, it came from a celebrity stylist who sashayed his way up onto the witness stand. Deontay Nash had the kind of joie de vivre and sass that literally had that courtroom hooked from the moment he showed up.
It seemed like they say that about every prosecution witness. They were talking the same way about Kid Cudi. Oh, they were just enamored by him. He just captivated the jury. And all it must be wonderful for them to see black people up there telling on other black people or something, because it just seems that they get so giddy about it. I don't think it's anything special about this witness or any of their witnesses. He's being charged with some serious crimes, and they talking about domestic violence and assaults and anything that a person with $1 billion would have, a gun in their house, drugs possibly. When the story broke and we were all being told about this Puff Daddy stuff, they were talking about the baby oil as if it had some drugs in it and he rubbed it on you and you passed out, or he had so much of it and it was related criminally to this case. If you buy a bunch of lubricant for whatever reason, that doesn't make it a RICO case. And I guess that's why I made this video, because I have a problem with the RICO part. And I'm a black man, and I don't want every black man in America who owns a business and commits a crime to have their business and their whole life tied to whatever crime it is they are accused of, because it means sudden death in every way possible. Your business is gone, you're gone, your family suffers. And going RICO on P Diddy was a bit of a reach, and it shows in every commentary that I get. They're overzealous. They want to make sure that little things seem like you can tie it to RICO. RICO? Really? RICO was established for the mob, for organized criminals who were running cities under. I mean, Cassie is one person. I mean, unless there's a whole lot of other victims that they ain't marched out yet. And Puff Daddy is one person. RICO cases are not even designed to be, they're morphing this stuff to fit people that they don't like, as opposed to taking your crimes and making them fit into what the RICO statutes are. And that's what they are. Instead, they're going and moving things around. We got enough problems as black men in this country. To be rooting for this man to get life is not what we should be doing. Whatever he did, he should be punished for it appropriately. But they should not start charging RICO charges just because he had a lot of money. If he didn't have a lot of money, would it be charged as RICO? Would it be charged at all? And one person, Cassie, who apparently was, I guess, being looked at as a sex worker of his or whatever you want to call it. Well, sex workers and sex slaves and people don't get to go out and date other folks and have secrets that are that big that he has no idea what's going on with her, which means she had to be out of his presence long enough and frequently enough to have whole nother relationship, which in my opinion is a person who could have gone. If all you're with that man for is because you want to be able to eat and live on that level, then yeah, we got a problem. But if you really were going to be homeless if you ran away from him, yeah, I don't know. And using the sex tapes as, you know, I'm going to release the tapes. At some point, you have to say, I am being abused. Go to the police. Tell them, look, I want to leave. I want to get away from this dude, but he's going to release these sex. Well, it might have to go down. It's pretty much going down that way now. But the amount of money involved, what Puff is capable of paying people to shut up and do this and do that, RICO was made for the mob, and those type of charges should only be applied to the mob. Puff is guilty of something, but I don't think they charged him appropriately, which is going to make his attorney look like a genius, because if my client was being charged with RICO and he is not even a gangster, he has nothing to do with any kind of organized anything. If he was the only person making these plans and brainstorming these corrupt crooked things to do up just by itself. And his money was coming from the music industry and the clothing industry and cologne industry. He wasn't making his money off of that. That's what organized crime is. That's what organized criminals do. And they do a whole bunch of other illegal stuff up to and including killing people to make sure that they can have their organizations run in a way they see fit. And what Puff was doing was taking money from his music business, and that's how he chose to have fun. And in some people's eyes, he may have even found a willing participant in Cassie and some other women in his life, as far as we know. But does that make him guilty of the RICO? That's a stretch. And I see a lot of people on TV who are just mad to be mad, and it is not pleasant to see a relationship between any two people go to that extreme of violence, that level of violence. And I know she could not have been happy and had been forced and had things done to her against her will, potentially, with that kind of violence involved. But at some point, we have to understand you can't feel bound to him because of his power and his money, because you're reaping benefits on that side. The cars, the life, the people you meet, the parties you go to. It's a downside to leaving him as well, other than just his threats. And I would like for people to explore that as well and look at it realistically. And in the worst case scenario, if he was guilty of everything that they should have charged him with, he wouldn't be doing life in prison for anything that we've seen. I don't care. And they keep bringing up the parties that he's thrown. If a person throws parties that turn into orgies at the end of the night, it might not be something everybody want to be a part of, but is it RICO? Is it the kind of stuff that should get you locked away for the rest of your life? Is being an abusive boyfriend to Cassie, and maybe even abusive to her Kim Porty or other relationships, but you would have to have people come forward and testify their story. It should be other ex-girlfriends on that witness stand other than Cassie, so we can see that he has a pattern of this, not just accusations. And I'm saying that from the perspective of a black man, as a black man, and not wanting to be in a situation that might not have anything to do with what Puff is going through. But it does let me see how easy it is to get us to pile on our own people and want them to be buried underneath the jail and up to and including whatever you can give them, as long as you convict him and give him the rest of his life behind bars, is how some people feel. Some people who look like him. And it's unfortunate because he deserves his day in court just like everybody else, and a good defense. And the opportunity to not be overcharged and over-sentenced like so many folks have been is only right, you know. But yeah, hell yeah, he's guilty of something. But what he's guilty of and what they're trying to do, I think, is a bit of a reach. And Cassie should be able to own up and be honest to her part, whatever it is. You know, I mean, from the beginning to the end, some of these witness testimonies I'm hearing, people getting on the witness stand, the first day they spent with him, he's like threatening their life and being overly aggressive. In most cases, you have not got hooked on the paychecks. You have not got hooked on the life. You don't even know this dude, and he's already coming at you in a way that you think your life might be threatened. And then you end up working for him for years and years. That just doesn't seem realistic. I've never worked in the entertainment industry, and if that's what happens normally, then that's what happens normally. But in real life, if I go to work and I feel physically threatened by my immediate boss on the first day, there probably won't be a second day. And that kind of stuff needs to be explained. And the defense has a case to put on. They're not done yet either. But just as a black man, I just can't pile on. Not on this. Not on no RICO charges on a man who was a sexual deviant, an abusive boyfriend. And he probably, if you want to break it down, there should have been something, or should be something, that the United States government works on that deals with cases that fall into this line. Taking someone and being a little more than just a regular abuser. You're a little more than just what a guy who comes home and his wife and him get into it and he can't control himself and he starts swinging. But there's somebody who really uses his power and his money and his position. But Rico and life is a bit much. Cassie, he didn't kill Cassie. He didn't murder her. And Cassie is the only person we've seen up there who is the victim. And if there are other defendants, and some of these people who are coming up here as witnesses are the co-defendants or should be the co-defendants, what have they done? What did he do that rises to the level of Rico? It's very easy for people to go in there and testify for the government and say, hey, he would have fired me. He threatened me with my job. Well, when a person is asking you to break the law, and if you don't, you're going to be terminated. You won't work for their company anymore. Then you just have to deal with the termination because they're asking you to do something that as an individual you can be punished for, as we see. But apparently the government is being very lenient on everybody to get their testimony against Puff. And I just think that there should be more defendants up there if the scope of what went on is on the magnitude of what they're trying. Because I haven't seen that much. I mean, maybe growing up where I grew up, I've seen too much because this isn't it for me.
Apart from being right out of central casting, Nash hammered nails into Diddy's coffin today, one after the other, by testifying about things that line up squarely with racketeering. If you think the trial so far has been all about domestic abuse and not about the charges that Diddy's actually facing, like sex trafficking and racketeering, this stylist, Deontay...
And sex trafficking, in their opinion, is going across state lines. So if you make a plan to have one of your freaky parties in New York and you're in LA and you end up over, I don't know. That's the part that I have a hard time with, because you were buying prostitutes on the regular. Cassie was actually booking some of those and paying and participating and not like, giving the sex workers some kind of a vibe or wink or help, help pinch him, help me, and he's like, what's up with you? Or what's going on? To sense something wasn't right. But for nobody, and I think I was looking at CNN the other day and they had the Punisher on there doing an interview. And he didn't feel, after 13 or 14 times of being with them, that she was under any kind of duress or having an issue, or, whenever they needed to talk, they go out the room, talk, then they come back in the room and resume. That's like, not saying that she wasn't there against her will. I'm sorry. But every time for all those years, that's the kind of stuff that if Puff was capable of that, there needs to be some charges and some specific charges that address this kind of crime. You don't just go find the worst crime you can that has none of the components of his infraction and just put it on there. Hey, we'll charge him with RICO. I mean, that would be like charging him with being a serial killer and he didn't kill nobody. You have to charge the crime. And that's a problem that I have with the United States government, is that they think it's okay to get the media involved and get the prosecutors to overcharge people, and everybody in the audience, or the public rather, who is their audience, is screaming for blood and guts. So they've cleared that hurdle. They don't have to worry about the people in the public out there picketing outside the courthouse. But Puff's on his own. They got black people not supporting him. Like, he's on his own. And he should be for what he did, but not for what he's being charged with. Doesn't make his crimes any better or any worse by charging him RICO. We know what we saw, and it is what it is, and enough details have come in and AI videos. We know what we're looking at, and it is not life in prison.
Nash, his tour on the witness stand might just change your mind. Look, it is no secret that Diddy was violent, abhorrent, disgusting. We all saw what he did to Cassie on video. He admitted to it himself, but he's not charged with assault. And Deontay Nash testified about things that went way beyond violence and went straight to the heart of the prosecution's case: force, fraud, coercion. He told the jury that he actually witnessed Sean Combs regularly beating and threatening his girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, and that he would threaten to release the sex tapes of her. That he would use those sex tapes to get her parents fired from their jobs. And that he, Diddy, as head of Bad Boy Records, would refuse to release her music if Cassie didn't do as he said.
Hey, if you got, and that's been happening a lot lately too with all the cameras and videos around, but if you threaten to release a sex tape between yourself and someone for whatever reason, in an argument, over anything, and you sock them or you slap them or whatever, or you beat them up pretty bad, and you end up being charged, would you be shocked when you got your paperwork and it said RICO? And you're like, whoa. And your girlfriend's saying, hey, you know what? Every time we had sex, it wasn't consensual. No, sometimes he would get a little, and you're like, what is she talking? You think it's crazy. She's charging you with that. And as a result of a few things she said, based on the evidence of the violence that did occur, they charge you with RICO. RICO. You'll be like, what? And the richer you are, the greater your chances. Because this isn't a RICO case. I'm sorry. I had to say that 100 times. And we don't have to pile on. We can think for ourselves and understand that this is a terrible person to be in a relationship with. And a person who probably breaks the laws on many fronts. Like people with that kind of access probably do. But to take his illegal actions and try to sweep them in a pile and turn it into a RICO case, that's not what RICO was made for, and that's what it should not be being used for. Just because it's Puff, Daddy Combs, or whatever you want to call them today. I don't care who it is. The United States government should stop overcharging people. And if they get you, you're in there for 100 and 200 years. And if they don't, they keep coming. They're not going to stop until they get you on something. But Puff's time in the light is right now. I wish anybody in a courtroom the best of luck, but I feel bad for the what Cassie had to go through. I just feel that, in my personal opinion, you cannot make him be 100% guilty and her 100% innocent, or vice versa. And it ain't 50-50 either. But as the music mogul with all the money, most of his relationships have probably had all kind of illegal activity in them. A lot of that kind of similarities. Maybe haven't risen to the point of a courtroom drama like this, but you get with a guy like Puff, and you got to kind of have an idea how it's going to go down. But it's so many other dynamics that aren't being brought up, like the fact that Cassie was pursuing an R&B career. She wanted fame. She wanted fortune. She had the look. She may have lacked the talent. Did he hold back her music because she wasn't good, or did he hold back her music because it wasn't good? It's so many dynamics, and to just try to bury the man and put him in jail for the rest of his life, and his kids mean nothing, and none of this other stuff means, and I don't know. I can't subscribe to that. I just can't. I feel in first place, a person needs to be charged appropriately, and then it's better to commentate and talk about and judge. But when he's being looked at as possibly going to jail for the rest of his life for what they brought up so far, I disagree. I mean, heck, what if we all found out in 3 years or in 5 years that Kid Cudi's car was firebombed by someone else, some other way, and that didn't have nothing to do with that particular issue? I mean, he met the dude when he said he looked like a Marvel superhero or whatever. That's what Kid Cudi said. Did Puff aggress? Did he have his bodyguards sock him? Just rough him up a little bit? He walked in, they talked, he walked out. What Puff was like to be around. And of course you upset if you find out your girl sleeping with somebody else you didn't know. Kid Cudi was upset. He didn't know either. They both were being kind of, that's not a person who's completely innocent in the middle there. there's some, she might have been needing a break. She might have been needing help, but she should have used Kid Cudi or the police department or someone as a way out. Like, hey, I need help. I got to get away from this dude. But she was doing some things that some people, under the kind of duress that the court is implying, wouldn't be doing. In my opinion, it's such of a difficult thing when the court system is so difficult on us to begin with, and then we do go and add to it and give them breadcrumbs and extra fuel that they don't need to make it even worse. Puff is a person who deserves to be punished in some way for this. But if the courts didn't find him guilty of some of these things or are able to be charged for some of these things because statute of limitations or not enough evidence, and it's frustrating, I know. But as a result of that, you either file charges appropriately or you drop the case. You don't just keep going and going, well, he was a billionaire. Okay. And he, and he crossed state lines. Yeah. And he had guns in his closet. Yeah. If you just start adding up all that, yeah, sure. Almost everybody can probably be hit with RICO if you get them up there and can get the jury against them. And that's the part I don't like.
The time. If you're keeping score, that kind of behavior from a guy at the head of an enterprise could easily be seen as the jury as extortion, coercion, forced labor, all the elements, the racketeering charges that Diddy's fighting. The stylist also testified that on Cassie's 29th birthday, she confided in this stylist that she did not want to participate in Diddy's planned freak-off.
And that was a conversation she had with her stylist. And was that the only time she ever told him that? Or did she keep coming back saying, man, this motherfucker, I do not want to do this. And I'm telling you guys, it's very difficult when it's been a long time because it could be some manipulation on her part. You dealing with a dude who's a billionaire. You dealing with your husband, your current husband used to work for him as well. Is this what it really is? Or it's a very difficult case. And I'm just sorry. I'm not one of them people who are going to just jump on board because everybody's piling in. The government and the prosecution and Cassie's side is being well represented with theories and all kind of ideas of how this could have happened and how it did happen. And it definitely, in the place and time we are in this country, needs to be looked at with a different set of eyes in a different way, and being reasonable and not just saying what that beating out in front of the elevator was horrible to watch. That was a terrible thing, but she didn't go and end up in the hospital for several days as a result of that or anything like that. Her life wasn't, he didn't beat her within an inch of her life, and the violence between a man on a woman or a woman on a man is unacceptable, totally unacceptable. But there are punishments and there are crimes that can be charged to that kind of behavior and should be, and not RICO. I'm just so pissed off about the RICO thing because it's not RICO. And I ain't going to argue with nobody over nothing else except it ain't RICO. Anybody who's a lawyer or a commentator, a pundit, another YouTube channel, I really want a clear definition of how this is RICO. It's really, really horrible to see them want somebody convicted so bad that they just lose it and go to the RICO charges. I mean, RICO, really? That's a lot. There's so many people who have been charged with things that had sexual misconduct involved in them, and they didn't go to RICO on it. I mean, RICO, it's almost an intentional attack to bring down and to get his money, to get his wealth. And that's what it appears to be. Because if you just want the man, charge him with the crime and let him go do the time. But when you start trying to get his businesses, everything that he touched is involved in beating up Cassie and forcing her into freak-offs, it's just a bit of a reach from where I sit.
After all, it was her birthday, not his. Maybe there were some freak-offs that she enjoyed, and maybe there were some that she did not.
But we can't tell. And that's where the jury is going to have to decide what they feel. If the jury, the ones who are judging this, feels that they don't feel each time she was being forced, and or if there were some times when she really didn't like it, or if she didn't like it at all, that's up to the jury to figure out. But from where I sit, there's a lot of women who would have been in Cassie's place and not complained a little bit, not none. Cassie seems to be, but it just with the passage of time, fortunately for her, she found a good husband. She got a family and all that going on for her. But I just feel like getting paid for being beaten up by your boyfriend is a beautiful thing. Everybody don't have that kind of recourse. That doesn't always happen in folks' lives. They just have to lick their wounds and move on. And she is in a fortunate position to even be able to address this, or have been able to address this, and got paid. That's a beautiful thing to at least have been able to get some monetary support for yourself. But Rico, nah.
But felt she had no choice. For the record, forcing your employee, using your enterprise and your power at the top to have illegal sex with prostitutes that have crossed state lines, that's called sex trafficking, friends. It's called forced labor. And that is what Diddy is charged with in this trial. But this trial has so many people asking the question, what exactly is RICO? Well, technically, RICO stands for Racketeer Influenced Corrupt Organization. And back in the 70s, the feds created it as a means to bring down the mob, like an umbrella charge that...
So let me ask you this. Racketeer Influence Corruption Organization, RICO. Wouldn't a company that hired illegal immigrants be a RICO? I mean, you're underpaying them. You hired them illegally, and there's a whole bunch of them. Wouldn't that be a corrupt or a criminal organization? And you don't see the United States government going after corporations who are exploiting workers in the masses. That would be closer to RICO than what Puff has done. Puff needs his ass charged appropriately so that I can enjoy this trial more. I am not going to enjoy this trial if he gets convicted of RICO in these United States for sex trafficking one person and paying for male prostitutions and being a little freaky and weird. If that's RICO, and they're not shutting down businesses in the United States who really do qualify for that, whose CEOs have really been caught with prostitutes and drugs, and they didn't link it to the company, they charged them individually. And I don't like the RICO part.
Bunched all together, a whole bunch of different crimes. And that is the same federal law that Diddy's facing now. My next two guests know this law maybe better than anyone, and know how hard it is to beat a federal RICO case, because they're both former mobsters jailed by the feds for RICO. Michael Francisi was a captain in New York's Colombo crime family. He served 8 years for racketeering and extortion. And Anthony Ruggiano Jr. is the son of a Gambino crime captain who was locked up 4 different times for robbery, gambling, and, yes, RICO. Michael and Anthony, welcome to both of you. And Michael, I said Francisi, and I think it's Francis, so I will correct myself before we even get started. Thank you both so much for being here. I have so many questions for you. Let me start with this, and I'm going to open it up to the both of you, but Michael, I'm going to get you to start. For a lot of people, RICO is all about the mob. It's all about what you see on The Sopranos. It's those kinds of crimes. It's not the stuff that they see on tape where Diddy's beating his girlfriend up. But I know that you guys have had a chance to kind of look into this case. You've heard what I just said in the opening of this case. So do you think that this is RICO, or are you scratching your heads?
Well, first of all, you can say my name either way, Francis or Francisi, so you're correct. But I
Okay.
will say, the RICO statute was definitely created, I think back in 1970, a fellow by the name of DeBakey created it specifically to go after the mob. No question about that. It's certainly evolved over the years because the government obviously can use a law in any way they see fit. They've gone after Wall Street people with it and a lot of other people. So they'll use it outside of the mob. What's a little bit confusing here is normally there is a criminal enterprise that's involved, a group of people. I had 3 racketeering indictments, 2 federal and 1 state. And in each case, it was the Franzese family, the Franzese group as part of an enterprise. And I had a lot of co-defendants. I didn't hear the government's opening statement on this to see how they tied this into a racketeering statute, because as far as I know, it's only Diddy on trial, and he's on trial alone. So are they claiming that he is a one-man enterprise? That's what's kind of confusing to me, because the charges against him can certainly stand alone. I don't think they need to be part of a racketeering indictment. But again, I'd have to know what the opening statement was and how they put that theory together that this could be under the RICO statute.
So you know what? I'll throw this in here, and Anthony, you can jump in. From the way I see things, what the prosecutors have tried to determine was that here's Diddy at the top of Bad Boy Records and the enterprise that he's created, the big businesses that he's created. He's got employees that he has, he's paying as security. He's got employees like Cassie, who is supposed to be releasing music. He's got employees like assistants who he tells, you go and set up the freak offs and you go and get my drugs. And, you grab Cassie and bring her to this vacant building and threaten her with a lie detector test. So I think what they're trying to say is that he used his business and he used his corporate card from Bad Boy Enterprises and he used cash from the business plus assistants and employees to carry out a lot of the crimes that they're alleging one after the other, with these witnesses. So if I lay it out that way, Anthony, what do you think? Do you think this lines up with the RICO that you know?
I feel a lot like Michael. I'm struggling with it too because my RICOs also, there was co-defendants. I read his indictment. I started reading his indictment today. And his business is the enterprise, and the people that worked for him were part of the conspiracy. So maybe they're unindicted co-conspirators, and they got immunity because, like Michael said, on my indictment, it said the United States of America versus, and then there was 8 names. And we all conspired to commit crimes. Diddy's alone. Who did he conspire with? Did he conspire by himself? Did he extort people? Yes, he did. Did he kidnap people? He held them against his will? Yes, he did. He brought people across state lines, which is a federal offense. But to be a RICO just on him, it's hard for me to understand how that happens.
Yeah, and I do think that, listen, we got weeks and weeks left of just the prosecutor's case, but already we've seen one of the assistants who said he got immunity. And my feeling is that his second in command, Christina Coram, either she's going to plead the fifth or she's going to have been offered immunity or use immunity for her testimony. I do think
they got people getting immunity for their little part of a crime. Well, I booked a hotel room and I went and bought the drugs. And then you're putting little pieces like that into a RICO. If these people rented a hotel room for Puff and Cassie to go have a threesome in or a orgy in or whatever they chose to do, how are you going to be threatening people, whatever their part in it was, because they helped set the scene, set the thing in motion as employees of his, you're his assistants or whatever. It just seemed like a bit of a reach to be threatening potential, threatening his workers and employees to be potential defendants in this case. Like, you're going to be charged too. And, they hear RICO, they're like, oh, shit, RICO? You can, and prosecutors do it all the time, which I think is something that they shouldn't be allowed to do because it gives them way too much leverage to be able to overcharge you and then come down a little later, more the realistic approach. But to get you locked up with a high bail, they charge you with something that's just ridiculous. And I don't agree with it. I think you should have charged people appropriately from the beginning. And then that should be a part of because they know that they have overcharged you and they reached and they went, oh shit, but they can bring it on back in after they done had you locked up for a year or two. If once they put them charges on you, that's it. If they decide they want to bring them down, they should have to drop the whole case. It's just not right because these are people's lives. And everybody deserves a fair chance, no matter what. I don't care how mad they make me about something somebody did. In fairness, I ain't going to forget that person is still a person who deserves as much compassion and fairness as everyone else. Because that's the hardest time to get it, especially when you got the media and everybody in sports. You can't even talk about anything without that coming up. And it's coming up, and I'm hearing it in a way that sounds like talking points and like they're rehearsed. And everybody's repeating the same thing. And it's like the way they rolling with this RICO thing, something better happen to stop it, because you can't have money. You can't have a gun or two. And you better not put your hands on nobody, especially a female. It looks like if you beat a man up in that way, that could be RICO charges too. I mean, shit. The way they rolling with it, I don't think that they're charging the crimes appropriately. They're charging you how much they like you or dislike you. Their anger, their frustration with you, and what they think they can get from the public in the way of support.
You're right. It's kind of confusing without the conspirators. But my feeling is that right now, to get the testimony against the guy at the top, they may be offering them immunity. But like I said, we still have to find that out. I got this question for you, Michael. I opened the show by saying that I felt sad by sitting through a lot of today's testimony, because this stylist, he just went over instance after instance of just vicious, vicious beating and control that Diddy had allegedly over Cassie, things he saw firsthand, things that he even tried to step in and stop by jumping on Diddy's back, blood coming down Cassie's face during one of the beatings that Diddy allegedly turns around and says, look what you all made me do. And I wondered about a guy like that. Now that this is all coming out in the public, if Diddy's convicted, this is not the kind of behavior that I used to hear about with the mob. They beat up and...
Because Puff isn't a member of the mob. He's a woman beater. He's an abusive man. He's abusive in his relationships. He's abusive toward women. He is not a mobster, and he ain't a part of no kind of RICO conviction that they might put on him. That RICO and him shouldn't be used in the same sense. He's a horrible person, but he is not meeting the criteria to be charged with RICO. That's the part. And it's just to the point of where they get loose with it. And in these days and times, it's not good for the rest of us. Because if they can do that to people like that, what can they do to us?
Kill guys, but they didn't beat up and kill girls all the time. Do you see a big difference here with the kind of behavior Diddy's accused of doing compared to the behavior of mobsters?
Oh, absolutely. Let me say this. I always take the position, someone's innocent until proven guilty. That's just my position all the time. However, we have seen certain things. I think everybody has seen the hotel video where he was obviously beating her up. And the testimony has been absolutely despicable. And nobody in my former life would ever approve of something like that. And I think Anthony will vouch for that. We didn't beat up women. We didn't do things like that. We were taught to respect women in a big way, especially our families. So, in our life, if you violated another made man's wife, daughter, sister, mother, you're in a lot of trouble. So we didn't stand for that in any way, shape, or form. And like I said, the acts that are being described here are disgusting, despicable. If somebody like that was in our former life, he wouldn't last, quite honestly. And again, I would love to hear, I believe that the defense is going to attack the RICO statute here. You said, possibly there are witnesses that have been given immunity. Not possibly, 100%. I mean, that's how government builds cases. They go after people, they get them to cooperate, and they give them immunity. So like Anthony said, there's probably several unindicted co-conspirators here that all decided, hey, we're not going to take the fall. We're going to cooperate. We're going to testify, and that's why they weren't indicted. So I would believe what Anthony said, that, they're going to use the theory that you said, that the whole, Bad Boy Records was a criminal enterprise. He was at the top of it. He used these other people to implement his criminal schemes, and that's how they charged him with RICO. But these acts are just...
Yeah, he's being charged with the beatings of Cassie and the sex trafficking of Cassie and the rape of Cassie and those things. Where the other crime? They showed guns that they got out of his house. Where is he being charged with the gun charges? Did they find enough drugs to charge him with drug charges and all of these things? And if they did, why aren't these charges being charged like they charge normal people? You got drug charges, you got assault charges, you got even rape charges. Yeah, whatever charges you have, but you don't combine them into RICO charges. That's my problem. I'm sticking to it because I know too many people that could happen to. And this is one of those cases where they're getting tired of rich black people doing stuff they don't like. And if you're a rich enough black person and you do something like what Puffs is doing, and they want to, all they got to do is find 3 or 4 things that you did that could be charged as pretty serious crimes, and then put them all together and call it RICO, and lock you up forever. That just seems unfair. And in the United States of America, based on, we need to start what they say, walking it like we talk it. And quit just using the public opinion and your media to influence people into hating folks and disliking folks and being unfair to folks just because of their particular situation, and everybody piles on. That's easy.
The real question is, how did this go on for 20 years? 20 years this was going on. A guy as high profile as that, and I've said this before, and nobody gets charged for it. It's allowed to continue for 20 years. There's no question that people knew that this was going on. There were high profile people involved. How does something like this go on for 20 years? Anthony, in our former life, this wouldn't last a year. People would be down in it.
Definitely.
Yeah, you know what, Anthony, I'm gonna get you to dovetail on that because I want to know if Diddy's convicted and he ends up spending the rest of his life in a federal prison, given what we know now, the filth of his behavior, the absolute filth of his behavior when it came to how he treats women. One woman, absolutely. The others, so far, it's just an accusation. How will he fare behind bars?
Well, I have 2 scenarios. If the BOP buries him in like a Marion or the Supermax in Colorado, he'll do a terrible bit. But if he goes to, my opinion, if he goes to a regular federal prison, he's going to be fine because the kids there, the people there, he has a lot of money. He's still, he's in the music business. Everybody wants to be a hip hop artist. He's going to do fine in prison. He's going to do a good bit. He's got a ton of money, and he's going to do fine in prison unless the BOP buries him in a Supermax. That's the only way he's going to have issues. Other than that, I don't think he's going to have a problem with a certain group of people. Maybe mob guys might shun him. I'm sure people might throw, innuendos at him. He might have a fight or 2, but overall, I think he's going to do fine in there because of who he is and all his money. Just like Madoff did fine in there. All these other criminals.
Tell me why you think he would have a tougher time at a Supermax. What would be the difference, and what would that tougher time look like?
He'll be isolated. You get an hour a day. He'll be locked in a cell 23 hours a day. He'll have no rep. He'll have no contact to the outside world. He'll have nobody to talk to. He'll be just alone, isolated. And that's hard on a person to be isolated like that.
But you know what? Maybe if you got a target on your back because of the way you allegedly used women as punching bags for 20 years, maybe it would be better to be isolated than the alternative. Can't thank you both more for being so candid about your past and helping us to sort of understand what's at stake in this federal courtroom. I'd love to have you both back. Michael Franzese and Anthony Ruggiano, thank you so much.
Yeah, those are guys who've been convicted of RICO, and they out doing interviews on News Nation. Isn't that something? But they want Puff locked up forever. And I'm telling you, if they lock him up forever, just let it be for some direct charges and not RICO. Because I don't think RICO should be put on black people. And that's what that's looking like to me. You got a black billionaire who has committed some serious offenses, make it RICO. That's not the way it works in the United States. I know that's what they would like to see. But we can't be complicit to that and fall and jump on board and pray that they lock another black man up when he can get punished appropriately without getting 200 years, without getting all that crazy time and abuse and whatever else they're trying to do to him, when all they have to do is appropriately charge him and let the system take care of him and calm down some of these damn news folks. Because I see a little extra edge, and it's very unfortunate that anybody has to come in and even clarify that they just being a little bit over the top with this. And they are. They are. We could totally have real newscasts that fair and even and speaking the truth, and everybody can come away with an informed opinion of what's going on as opposed to this. This is just ridiculous. And with that, folks, like, comment, and please subscribe. And we'll see you on the next Black Popcorn.